And welcome to Jay's Smokehouse. This is the new interview process that I have decided to move into. And our first guest is Dr. William Peters. And he is the scientist I've been telling you about who has the emulsifier that is supposed to work within 7 minutes to 15 minutes. And actually, I do have a reaction video that you can see, and you will see the link in the description and also on screen now. And now I will have Dr. Peters introduce himself.
Hey, Jay. Well, thanks for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed listening myself, and so it's neat to come on, and I'm glad you're going to do these interviews. But yeah, so I'm William Peters. I have a PhD in biotechnology and engineering. My undergraduate degrees were in chemistry and biology. I've worked in the biotech industry for about 20 years, and I've worked in cannabis for about the last 10 years. And so that's where I come from and my background a little bit.
All right, that's awesome. And how'd you get into this cannabis field?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Everybody's got a story on how they swerve into the industry. But, I've always been receptive to the legalization, especially for medical purposes. But overall, I've never thought that, cannabis should be illegal, really. And in 2013, I was approached by a group in Illinois because Illinois was coming online medical. And so I got involved with them, helped them write applications for licensing. And it sort of began that way. I've worked on applications in several different states. In 2019, 18 and 19, I designed and helped build a CBD extraction facility in Kentucky, hemp extraction. And so there was a group of us that got together and designed a process and then implemented it. So I've done a little bit of everything within the industry, and it was actually the CBD industry that got me to research the water-soluble oil strategies. And, I had a chemistry background, but I didn't have a food science emulsification background. So I dug in for a couple of years and did some research, and we made some water-soluble powders and liquid formulations. And what this new product is that you have reviewed, NanoBlitz, is it's sort of a different business model, and we can talk about that more later. But it's a self-emulsifying liquid NanoEmulsifier. So we can talk more about it, but basically it equips the edible manufacturer and the producer to buy their own distillate, to buy their own THC oil, which gives them flexibility on pricing, and just mix it with the NanoBlitz in the right proportions, and using a couple of other techniques. And you end up with a nano-emulsified oil that goes then into your edible product. So it's a pretty neat thing, but we've been doing it in food chemistry for hundreds of years. Emulsification is not new.
Right. And there's a lot of other natural emulsifiers like sunflower lecithin that people have been using for probably that long as well. That's
right. Yeah. I mean, it's all about the size of the emulsification itself. How small of a particle can you create with your emulsification for absorption? So for drugs, that's the critical piece of it.
And so for the nano, is that fairly new?
It's new in this industry, and in the food industry, you don't need nano emulsification. It's much larger size particles, but in the pharmaceutical industry, definitely micro and nano emulsification techniques have been around for a while. Definitely in the last 15 years, it's become very popular. And even the COVID-19 vaccine, some of the strategy used to be able to deliver that is very similar to the kind of process we're using to try and capture the cannabis oil. It's a little bit different, but it's the same concept that you're encapsulating a molecule so that the body can more easily absorb it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Really awesome. And I think I've had somebody when I was discussing this on other platforms that we've had this process for cannabis for about roughly 10 years to be able to use nano emulsification. So what I would like to ask is what makes the NanoBlitz so unique?
So it's really the business model. It's our strategy, which is different. There's kind of two ways that people get water soluble oil for THC right now. First of all, they have a chemist in-house that does it on their own, figures out the process, and designs it themselves. And that's great. It's all kept within in-house, and you have your own strategy. Or you're buying the already emulsified oil, so it's already in an emulsifier, and then you're charged basically per milligram of THC, I believe. And so that can be very expensive, basically. When you're buying per milligram, it can get expensive. And so what NanoBlitz allows you to do is to negotiate your own prices for your distillate and for your THC oil, and therefore you control how much it is per milligram, because given the NanoBlitz, it's, you can do hundreds of thousands of doses with 1 gallon of NanoBlitz. So it allows you to reduce your costs, sort of customize them yourself.
That's really cool, and that's how I kind of understood it reading on your website. It seems that other emulsification processes, they already, like you said, already have the THC or the cannabis already infused into it, and so you're really limited to what you can do with it. And so
it is. So your concentration will be set. Whatever you buy, your concentration is set, so there's no changing that. You also can't change the ratio of emulsifier to the oil you're using. And so if you're using a more crude oil, you'd really want to adjust your percentages of emulsifier to oil. If you're using a much cleaner oil, then you can dial it back. It can be different. And so what we do is we just work with our customers to say, well, what are you making? Because chocolates are different than gummy bears, that are different than butter coating that you might be using on something. And so I've seen it used in several different products, and it's coming online now with some liquid formulations, which is really neat. So kind of like a Mio type of setup where you have a little a one shot, put it into your water bottle, and you're good to go with a 5 to 20 milligram dose, whichever that would be.
Okay.
So and I think the liquids work the best. It'll be interesting when we get to when the alcohol industry is allowed to do some mixing, because it works really well with beer or with alcohol. So I look forward to that in the future.
I do as well. That would be very, very cool and interesting. Another thing is that I myself, I've talked in the past on this channel how much I've enjoyed smoking cannabis, just because I've been a previous cigarette smoker, and I enjoy the feeling. But I am trying to move away from the smoking altogether, and I'm moving more into edibles, and that's why I've really taken a really shine to your product. And I actually did not know much about the nano emulsification, at least myself, and so this was really interesting to find out. But the fact that you can actually just buy your emulsifier and then use it even as just yourself, making your own homemade edibles. That's what I find so cool. And I'm always pushing for people to be able to grow and do their own medicine. So that's what I find so exciting and awesome about this.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think I sent you like 100-gram sample or 100 mil sample in a dropper bottle. So, for those of us who are more skilled in the arts and actually do extract oil or have oil or understand what to do with it, then yeah, it's great. It's something that you can use at home if you like. Mainly, of course, we're dealing with large scale manufacturers, in Michigan, MKX Oil, we're in Massachusetts and Michigan mainly right now. And then for CBD, there's a liquid formulation coming online with a group called MyHigh, which offers like a stir stick, a powder formulation that I created. But so it's starting to find its way into some places. But like I said, you either have a chemist on site that's doing it yourself, and then you can tailor your your formulations how you want, or you can make it easy and do something like NanoBlitz and mix it with your oil.
And so you can save on time, expenses, hiring a scientist, all of that stuff, just by your product. That's really cool, and I'm really glad that you explained that, because just finding out about the other emulsifiers, I was really interested in finding out the uniqueness, and I definitely see it. Also, I have some. You've actually answered most of the questions I was going to ask, but the main one I wanted to ask was what. And you don't. No worries if you don't want to answer this, but what NanoBlitz is made of? Is it safe? Is it is it organic? Is it safe to use? All those questions for those who might be skeptical of it.
Right. So it's these are food grade, super, 99.9% pure chemicals, but they're not organic in that we are not extracting them from something in nature.
Understood.
I mean, they're man-made through different processes, but they're very clean, and they're very common. If you're eating ice cream anywhere, you're probably eating some of these emulsifiers, because that's what's used in the industry. So there's hundreds of different emulsifier components that you can use to create an emulsification. And I think everybody's probably using a little bit of something different. But, there's lots of opportunity for that in this industry. There just hasn't been a great deal of the food science coming into this industry yet, except through, the production of edibles, of course. And so, the thing about the nano emulsification that's so critical is that, and this, that when a novice buys a chocolate, and it's a 10 milligram chocolate or whatever, and nothing happens after 20 or 30 minutes, well, they eat more. And so eventually it hits, and then it's too much. And so the benefit of the nano emulsification is just that it should hit you much quicker. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to get full force in 10 minutes, but you're going to start to feel it, and that will prevent you from overdosing, basically, or taking too much. It also makes it more effective, because if the body can absorb it more easily, then a 10 milligram sample should be absorbed better than a 10 milligram sample of just oil, where a lot of that's going to pass through and not get absorbed, because the body's mechanism for breaking it into nanoparticles takes more time, and over the course of throughout the digestive process, some of it is just going to pass through, and that's the way oil absorption is in the body. Your body either has to break it apart into tiny particles, or you have to break it apart into tiny particles for it to be absorbed.
Of course, everybody's got a story. I mean, me, myself, I remember taking edibles and, now I have a high tolerance, so I didn't feel them at first at all for the first couple times I used them. So I took a 100 milligram one, didn't feel it for 10 minutes, took another 50 milligram one, didn't feel it for 10 minutes, took another 50, and then it hit. And I mean, when it hit hard. And I was fairly, I knew what I was doing with cannabis at the time. And so I knew that, I could get past it. I'd be okay. But I can definitely see why somebody who's never experienced cannabis before wondering what on earth is going on. I'm going to the ER. I think I'm going to die. I'm having respiratory issues. I'm thinking about stuff that I've never even thought about. Just those receptors opening up in your mind, and just the things that your mind goes that you don't really go to without it. That right there can really send people into a freak out. So I definitely understand it.
I mean, the whole idea is to be able to control it, right? So that you have a reasonable dosage throughout the day, and you don't knock yourself out, right? And of course, as a novice or as somebody who doesn't really know, they don't know that yet. But and I think that's where these are helpful. Now, I will say that, and this is something I think you and I talked about before I sent you samples, is that, if you're a regular heavy user every day, then when you take a nano encapsulated anything, you probably aren't going to feel the onset in 10 minutes like somebody who's completely clean is going to feel. And that makes sense, I think, because it happens even if you're a smoker. I mean, if you have a much higher tolerance, it takes a lot more to get you the same kind of buzz or high that a novice wouldn't be able to even compete with that if you use that terminology. So I think this is going to make it, much safer for those people. And for the people who are hardcore users, it just means that you're going to peak earlier. You're still going to feel it earlier. It's not going to take an hour, but you're probably not going to feel the onset in 10 or 15 minutes. It'd be more like 20, just because you already have a residual amount of cannabinoids in your body because you're a normal, regular user. Mm-hmm. So I think that regular users should take that into account, that they may not feel the early effect of a nano encapsulated THC like someone who's just take a couple of days off, right? Then you usually feel it right away. So.
And like I said in the beginning of this podcast, please check out my review of NanoBlitz, because I have a it's got a timer at the bottom of the screen, and it's showing you as the time elapses how long it's taking. And I don't want to give too much information, just check out the video, but it's a lot faster. It works so much faster. I used less than I typically would. That was another test that I wanted to do, was if it's working so much faster, will less work about as well? And I believe so. It felt like more than I used. And so that is something that I really enjoyed. I think that just being able to get faster, I came down faster as well. And so I think that's another thing to focus on, is that some, edible highs will last 5-6 hours just because of how long it takes. It's still acting several hours in, as opposed to your NanoBlitz, which is working so quickly that you're able to come down more attuned to a smoking high rather than an edible high.
Yeah. I think that's the experience that a lot of the users have found as well. And I think that's why they've been popular in some of the, in the states that we've been in. I mean, we just started working with the first company last year in the summer. And we worked with them for a while to make sure the formulation was right and their products were, good, and everything, the mixtures and the proportions were all correct. And so it's a new product. And I'm hoping that industry will take a look at it and say, hey, we could save a lot of money here using this strategy versus, what's available right now, which, like I said, is you're buying the THC and the emulsifier, and therefore your cost breakdown is hard to discern. It's pretty expensive, like everything, but NanoBlitz is cheap comparatively. So.
And that's exciting, and that's something everybody would like to hear, I'm sure.
I would think so.
And this will be a question I'm going to ask all my guests at the end of our podcast. I would like to say, what is your hope for the end, or for the future of cannabis?
Right. So, I come out of the pharmaceutical industry. Most of my career was spent designing equipment that, drug discovery researchers and faculty and university uses to qualify drugs and drug candidates. Well, and one of the most difficult things of drug discovery is finding drugs that are very specific for something in the body, whether that's a disease target or it's, affecting mood. There's a protein target that you're trying to hit with something. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to design something that's specific. But cannabinoids already specifically bind to 2 receptors in the body. Mm-hmm. And they have a huge impact, as you know, and as you've highlighted, huge impact on people's, on pain, on feeling and psychology, on creativity, on lots of things, right? And we know this because, we're all in the same, we're preaching to the choir here. But what hasn't been done, and this is what I hope will happen, because I think legalization is going to happen across the states and the government will step in and reclassify. But there's over 130 cannabinoids that we don't study, Exactly. THC is the only psychoactive one that we know of. There may be more, but the other ones are in such minor, small quantities that it's hard to study them. But that's what I think we need to do. I'm hoping that the industry will change to a place where we can start to pull all those cannabinoids apart and use them for therapeutic studies. Because I think there's a gold mine of opportunity there for anybody who's willing to take the risk and start to study these. As acceptance and certain generations move on, acceptance will increase, and we'll get that. We'll start to use it for medicinal purposes other than what we do now. And I think that's going to be a big deal for drug discovery in the future. And so I hope we get there.
Man, I couldn't agree more. I agree with everything you said. Love it. I mean, CBN is the reason that I started getting into doing these videos and wanting to get the information on cannabis out, just learning how much cannabis can help aside from just getting you high and or getting your inflammation down, which the Chinese and Egyptians were using over 2,000 years ago, or sorry, 4,000 years ago. And so it's amazing what cannabis has been able to do and what we're rediscovering on cannabis. So it's amazing and interesting to find out.
And the other, the terpenes that are likely unique as well, that are aromatic, that can be used in lots of different kinds of products if we pull them apart and separate them out. Some of those terpenes, actually aid in the absorption of molecules, especially in the gaseous form when you smoke. So there's a lot of molecules to study. And, again, I can't reiterate how difficult it is to find molecules that are specific for one receptor. And we have over 130 that bind to two receptors that we know have. What's nice also is they start with mild effects. So they don't have a drastic effect. They're easy to administer. There's just so many positives to going after these cannabinoids that we have to do it.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, and you're the perfect person to do it. All cannabinoids, and especially THC, are partial agonists, and the synthetic cannabinoids that they create are full agonists. And that's why it can be so much more potent with those, like the K2 spices that were the synthetic cannabinoids. I can attest to it. I tried that stuff, and man, it made me feel, it opened things into my mind that made me scared. I mean, it just some scary stuff.
Yeah, the synthetic product doesn't work very well. I mean, I think it's there's pharmaceutical, GW Pharmaceuticals.
Patentable.
Yeah, well, I think that's what GW Pharmaceutical did. I think they patented a THC version, but it's not very effective. And as you and I know, there's an entourage effect as well. There's definitely a cannabinoid kind of entourage effect that we don't understand yet, but that's because we're not really studying it. So.
And it seems that even terpenes, as you said, we don't really know yet, but it seems that even terpenes have something to do with it in some small way. And so just having the full spectrum of the plant, which is what I stress to people, can really help in so many ways that we don't even know yet.
Yeah, I agree.
And
but
so,
we do know that it does a lot, because if you just go to the National Cancer Institute's website, you can find a dozen very good, recent professional publications talking about tumorigenesis being slowed down or halted altogether, and lots of different conditions that are affected. So in drug discovery, then what you do is you go after optimizing those molecules to make it better. If there's a tumor, if there's any way to shrink or to prevent tumor growth, we should be studying that, I think.
Exactly. Amen.
And make it better,
That is awesome. And I totally agreed to that. And that's another thing is I've seen theories by many doctors saying that the rise in many diseases and cancers might be contributed to us stopping using cannabis or hemp as a staple in our diet. Is that we really consumed a lot of hemp and cannabis and like seed and all stuff like that. And he said just the acids that we get before you break them down into compounds, the cannabinoid acids have so much more health benefits. And so they have theories that the rise in so many diseases, not solely, but can be contributed to our disuse of cannabis.
It's hard to say for sure, but we know that there's a very positive effect that's associated with it, right? I mean, period. And you can take THC out, right? I mean, that's what Charlotte's Web proved. Take THC out, and you've got a CBD heavy strain with all the other cannabinoids that prevents kids from having seizures, that have certain conditions that produce seizures. That's incredible. There's something happening there that we need to investigate further.
And like on another podcast with the Trusted Canna Nurse, she says that a 9-year-old she was helping treat with cannabis. Now, it wasn't solely cannabis. She was using, I think, other treatments. But with the aid of cannabis, she went into full remission of her cancer. And that is just amazing. And if that happens, it's something definitely we should look more into.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of the drugs that we take have an efficiency or an efficacy that's pretty, that's not 100%, basically, is what I'm saying. So, why wouldn't we? If there's a 30% chance that it might help with the condition, it certainly isn't going to hurt. And that's the great thing about it. It's very mild. It's not dangerous in terms of, compared to the opiates and some of the other drugs that we have to prescribe, So I think there's probably some cannabinoid manipulations that can be done to be a pain reliever. And it will be a pain reliever that we already know the body can break down well, it can handle well. It's not, so powerful that it's going to harm someone. So I think that we need to go after that for sure.
And that will be a new video coming up soon, is the first time using cannabis as a pain regimen and the amazing works it can do. Now, it doesn't take it away. It doesn't make it perfect, but to be able to manage your pain with just cannabis was an amazing thing, and not have to rely on pain killers. That was,
and I don't, for a lot of people, those don't work either. Right. I mean, for a lot of people, the opiates are not, I mean, I can't take them.
Or they're highly addictive.
Yeah. And they don't, my pain is still there. So,
it just numbs you. It numbs you to it a little bit, but I mean, you can still feel it. You still know it's there.
Yeah. And I think the worst part of the opioids is that it slows down the smooth muscles in your body. So all the intestines and the different smooth muscles slow down as well. And that's not a good recipe for health, when your digestive tract is slowing down and you're having issues there. That's not fun. So.
Boy, I can't wait to, I really want to have you back, Dr. Peters. I'd love to do a lot more of these interviews and podcasts. I think I've learned a whole lot. I think everyone who's watching has learned a whole lot. And I can't wait to learn more from you and discuss. I'd love to discuss the history of cannabis with you as well. I think you have some great insights that could add to my series that I have.
I have a good history of it from about 1975 on.
Well, I'll bring you back to the Stone Age, brother.
I've appreciated the deep history that you've done. That's great. So,
thank you very much.
So,
well, I've really enjoyed this very much. I would like people to know how to get to your site. So please check out the description. It's NanoBlitz.net. Check out his great products. And what were those other companies that your products are in?
We've got MKX Oil, Boss, and it's companies that are working with other edible edible companies, so kind of white labeling things. And so
Understood.
There's multiple companies using the same version.
Okay.
But I'll send you a list. There's actually a list on the front page of the website, so you can find it there.
Please check out his website, and definitely tune back in, because we're going to have some more episodes with Dr. Peters. I can't wait, and I can't wait for everyone to learn more about cannabis. But for now, Jay, as always, is going to go smoke a J.